There's very seldom a case where I personally feel excited about the directive from the EU, I have to be honest. This is different. Hey everyone, I'm Jon. I'm going to talk to you about some reward stuff in this vlog series. Today it's going to be about the Pay Transparency Directive, the EU Pay Transparency Directive. And one of the biggest themes of our time right now, if you are a nerdy HR professional like myself, a rewards person, an HR director, people that are working with anything within rewards and pay. So the EU Pay Transparency Directive is actually a very big thing. It doesn't sound very nice. It's a directive from the EU. But this is a fundamental change between employees and employers. Actually, the biggest change we've seen in decades. So this doesn't only impact one or two companies or the biggest companies you'd see out there. Our estimate is this will actually impact as much as 250,000 companies across the EU. And translating that to employees, it's at least 50 million individuals. So this is massive. And since I'm saying it's actually a fundamental change, let me just tell you a little bit about what that means. So without going into all the details, the overall theme is it's going to cover companies with more than 100 employees within each country for all of these things. And then there's one bit that's going to cover basically all employees, regardless of size. And the first thing is, as you see as an individual, is when you're a job seeker. You're looking for a job out there. And then the power balance has been on the employer side for ages. They come up with a job ad, people search for this job, and in the end, there is an expectation going back and forth in terms of salaries. This is one of the fundamental things here. The EU Pay Transparency Directive is about making sure that people actually are not being discriminated. And it stems from a change or a difference in pay between men and women. We've all heard about this in the past. The most recent checks has been that there's a difference around 14% across the EU when we do not take into consideration what jobs they have. So to make sure that this doesn't keep on going, in terms of the job seeking, that's the first place it can go wrong, you could say. And historically, recruitment agencies and the companies, they ask about what your salary expectation is. What is your current pay? This is no longer going to be allowed. As a company or as a recruitment agency, you are actually the one to show to the employee or the job seeker upfront what the salary range will be. Now, the second thing is, you could say, once a person is hired and are within the company, after some time, a lot of employees would want to know, what will it take for me to get promoted? How can I get to the next level? And if we then talk about, again, back to the 14.1%, the unadjusted pay gap, this is where it's kind of interesting. Because if we think about it, the excuse for many companies has been, well, yes, there is a pay difference and it's X%, double digit, what have you. But it's because we have more men in senior management positions. That may well be true, and it typically is true. But how did it happen? How did it get to that point? Is there a lot of people tapping each other's shoulder and say, hey, I like you, you like me, let's get promoted together, let's make sure we continue this success? That kind of camaraderie, if you call it that, needs to stop. It needs to be transparent what it takes to get to the next level, to get the right candidates, to get to the right places. So a transparency around what it takes to get promoted is going to be in place. This needs to be communicated within the company. It's not enough that HR has written this down in a fine PowerPoint lying in some OneDrive folder. It needs to be available to people. On top of that, at the same time as you have all of these things going on, you need to show what is your pay gap like. And if you're 100 plus employees up to 250, you need to do this every 3 years in every country where you're more than 100 people within the EU. If you're more than 250 people, you need to do this every year in every location that you're more than 250 people. And if that difference then comes out to be more than 5%, you need to dig deeper. You need to look into then like-for-like jobs. And that also demands something from you in terms of structure, in terms of title structure or job architecture or what have you. Now the final point, the fourth point, isn't really limited to any size of company. It goes for all companies. And that's the right to have knowledge on the current pay within a certain role. So then the employee will have a right to ask their manager, what is the current average pay of similar positions to mine? In the past, this is not a question you'd ask, and you certainly wouldn't get an answer. Now they have to answer. The companies, if you represent the company, you will have to answer this question. If you are an employee, you can ask this question, and the company has to answer. And coming up with the answer, there is a number of things. It's the burden of proof is on the employer that this is the correct way of seeing the number. They need to prove it if you do not believe the number. There is also a thing of saying, well, if you're paid below the average, there needs to be an objective explanation as to why that is the case. If there isn't, there is a chance that this employee then will have the right to get that average pay. And the way it looks now, in the way we see the law, is that this will be even rolling backward until the day that they started in the company. And if you start calculating this number, it's mind-blowing. So this could be a very expensive situation. It could also be a very difficult one, and we can get a lot of cases on that. So I would recommend, highly recommend, get started now. Have a look at the overall things. Reach out to an expert. Could be us, could be others, but reach out to an expert, make sure that you get some advice as to how you get started. It's been approved now in March 23. There's up to 3 years to get this implemented in each member state. And there could be small differences, and there will be small differences between the countries. But think of, what if one country is ready already in a year? Then are you ready in 1 year? So that's basically where we're at the moment. I feel personally this is the biggest change we've seen within rewards, certainly, and frankly within HR for decades. And thinking of this, it needs to be a pivotal part of your HR strategy going forward. So stay tuned for more on this, and we'll keep you updated on it.